Welcome to this explainer on the future of work. Could an AI take your job before the end of this decade? We're diving deep into the data today, stepping completely away from those sensational headlines to separate the fear-mongering from the actual facts about artificial intelligence and, well, your livelihood. We'll be looking at hard numbers, real corporate case studies, and clear trends to figure out exactly how the global workplace is transforming right now. It is absolutely the anxiety-inducing question on everyone's mind right now. And you know what? It's a totally valid one. So let's jump straight in and investigate what's actually happening out there. We really need to understand not just if jobs are changing, but how, why, and most importantly, who is standing right there on the front lines of this massive technological shift. Okay, let's start with this staggering number, 300 million. According to a massive report by Goldman Sachs, 300 million full-time jobs globally could be exposed to AI automation over the next decade. I mean, that is a gigantic chunk of the global workforce. When you hear a number like that, it definitely sets the stakes incredibly high. But here's the thing. Exposed doesn't necessarily mean replaced. And understanding that distinction, that's your key to navigating what comes next. Section 1. The power of generative AI. Why this time is different. To really wrap our heads around why 300 million is such a massive number, we have to look at the huge contrast between past automation and what's happening right now. Think about past waves of automation. They heavily targeted physical, routine factory work, right? It was all about robotic arms on assembly lines. But generative AI, it is fundamentally different. It's directly encroaching on cognitive tasks, reasoning, communication, and those highly skilled white-collar jobs we used to think were completely untouchable by machines. We aren't just automating muscle anymore, folks. We're automating aspects of the mind.
Section 2. Klarna, IBM, and the Corporate Reality Check.
Instead of just looking at theoretical numbers, let's look at some real-world evidence from massive corporations. The sequence of events at Klarna is a perfect example of what industry insiders are actually calling the Klarna boomerang. So the fintech giant famously deployed an OpenAI-powered chatbot that handled 2.3 million customer conversations. That's about 2/3 of their total volume. In response, they cut roughly 700 customer service jobs, bragging about massive efficiency gains. But look at step 3. When really complex issues popped up, customer satisfaction absolutely plummeted. The AI just couldn't handle the nuance or the empathy needed for those high-stakes problems. So, what happened? Step 4. They experienced a layoff boomerang and actually had to rehire human staff, often on gig contracts, just to fix the quality issues. And this brilliantly illustrates the big lesson learned here. As Klarna's CEO, Sebastian Siemiatkowski, admitted later in an interview, "I had to pay a lot for saying AI can do all our jobs." Relying solely on AI really damaged their brand trust. It proved a super crucial point. While AI is phenomenal at handling sheer volume and repetitive tasks, human workers are absolutely still required for actual value, complex judgment, and genuine empathy. Now, IBM took a slightly different approach, and it builds perfectly on this exact point. They announced a pause on hiring for about 7,800 senior and back-office roles, specifically in HR and finance, because they expect AI to absorb that work over the next 5 years. But at the exact same time, their chief human resources officer revealed they are tripling their entry-level hiring. Why? Because they realize humans are absolutely essential for providing context. They need a whole new generation of workers to supervise these AI tools, manage client relationships, and step in the second the AI makes an error. The job titles might be the same, but the daily tasks, they're being completely rewritten.
Section 3. Jobs at the highest risk of automation.
So if AI isn't perfectly replacing everyone, where does the genuine risk actually concentrate? Well, it's in roles built almost entirely on repetitive, high-volume, rules-based tasks. Basic data entry sees about 75% of its tasks actively automated today. Routine customer support shows a 70.1% exposure rate. And general office and administrative support, that has a staggering 90% theoretical exposure to large language models. If a job consists entirely of moving data from one screen to another without needing any complex judgment, that is exactly where the floor is dropping out. And we really have to acknowledge that this disruption isn't evenly distributed across the workforce. Research from the Center for American Progress and the OECD shows that women are disproportionately exposed to AI automation. Basically, 79% of employed women work in highly exposed occupations, compared to 58% of men. This is mostly due to historically higher female representation in the exact clerical, administrative, and basic customer-facing roles we were just talking about. Section 4. The unreplaceable human. Jobs AI cannot touch. All right, let's shift to the other end of the spectrum. What makes a human worker genuinely unreplaceable? The jobs with the absolute lowest risk of automation have at least one of these three characteristics. First up, deep empathy and emotional intelligence. Things AI simply cannot genuinely feel or project, no matter how good it gets. Second, complex physical adaptability in unpredictable environments. Robots are great on an assembly line, but they are terrible in a messy, chaotic, real-world setting. And third, strategic leadership and moral judgment. The ability to actually take responsibility for high-stakes outcomes. When we look at the safest occupations out there, you can clearly see these traits in action. Healthcare workers, like nurse practitioners and physical therapists, have near-zero automation risk because an AI just cannot replicate clinical empathy or physically manipulate the human body. Skilled tradespeople, like plumbers and electricians, operate in highly variable physical environments that would totally baffle a robot. And creative leaders, like choreographers, they rely on genuine human inspiration and team motivation. AI just can't do that. Section 5. Surviving and thriving in the future of work. So knowing what's fundamentally at risk and what's definitively safe, how do we successfully navigate this incredibly fast-paced transition? Data from Harvard Business School brilliantly illustrates what's actually happening in the real world. The job market isn't just shrinking, it's bifurcating, it's splitting in two. They found that job postings for automation-prone occupations, those rule-based tasks, fell by 17% after the launch of generative AI. But incredibly, postings for augmentation-prone roles, jobs where humans use AI to do more and do it better, actually increased by 22%. The demand is shifting, not vanishing. Which brings us to a massive and kind of counterintuitive projection: 97 million. The World Economic Forum projects that while AI and automation may displace around 85 million jobs globally by 2030, it's simultaneously going to create 97 million entirely new roles. That results in a net positive of 12 million jobs for the economy. So the challenge isn't a lack of jobs. The challenge is the massive skills mismatch between the jobs being lost and the jobs being created. And hey, there is a massive financial incentive for you to adapt quickly to this new reality. A recent study by PwC found that workers who upskill and learn to integrate AI tools into their workflows are earning, on average, a 56% wage premium over their peers who don't have those skills. A 56% premium. The market is aggressively rewarding the people who figure out how to leverage this technology. So what should you take away from all this? To future-proof your career, you have to actively pivot. You absolutely must move away from execution-only repetitive tasks and lean heavily into strategy and oversight. You need to master the specific AI tools popping up in your industry and start treating them as collaborative partners. Double down on your human connection skills like empathy, negotiation, and leadership. And above all, embrace continuous upskilling as a permanent part of your professional life. The reality we're seeing across all the data and corporate case studies in this explainer is a fundamental shift in how we view competition. The battle isn't really a human against an AI. That is the wrong framework entirely. The actual competition playing out in the labor market right now is a human utilizing AI against a human who refuses to adapt. As this quote from McKinsey & Company perfectly captures, this is an evolution of skills. They note that AI will not make most human skills obsolete, but it will change how they are used. The whole goal is for AI to handle the common, tedious tasks, freeing us up to spend more of our day framing complex questions, interpreting results, and adding uniquely human value to our organizations. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. In the rapidly shifting economy of this decade, how are you going to position yourself? Will you be the irreplaceable human, directing the technology, adding empathy, strategy, and judgment? Or will you remain simply a worker competing against it? The choice and the opportunity is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining us, and keep learning.